Welcome to Two Homes. This podcast explores the relationship between our inner world and the systems we live within, from our bodies and beliefs to the businesses, destinations, and environments we shape. Because sustainability that isn't embodied doesn't last, and well-being that stays at the surface level doesn't change much at all. Together, we'll explore what it really takes to build systems that support people, places, and the planet over the long term. From leadership and organizational culture to the hidden patterns that shape how we live, work, and travel. This is an invitation to look a little deeper and to discover how meaningful change often starts closer to home than we think. Welcome to Two Homes. I'm glad you're here. We're starting to build a nice picture. We're starting to really get some deeper conversations happening in this space, and I'm glad you're here for it. If this is your first time listening, which may be the case, we're at episode 4. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. And if you've come back for more after listening to the first few episodes, I appreciate that so much. Today's episode, we are going to be diving into the topic of burnout. If you work in sustainability and sometimes feel exhausted, frustrated, or like you're pushing uphill, then you're not imagining it. Because a lot of sustainability roles are structurally misaligned with the change they're expected to deliver. Sustainability managers are often responsible for influencing systems that they don't directly control and aren't necessarily supported to control. It's about one-way broadcast or reporting on figures and very little about integration. And when you care deeply about an issue, which so many of the people in these roles do, I've seen this time and again, that someone working in marketing, in comms, in HR, have a passion for the topic of sustainability, and then a role comes up and it's like, okay, voluntary or not voluntary, all of a sudden you're the head of ESG and you've got the passion and the care for the topic, but limited scope and power to change the system. And the emotional load can become really heavy. This is where sustainability fails because responsibility is concentrated on this one role instead of shared through the organization. This episode feels a little bit more personal, and I wanted to talk about sustainability burnout because I have so many conversations about this, and 11 years in the business, just preparing to celebrate that fantastic milestone, I've experienced it myself. And it's not always what we think it is. There is so much depth, and there's times where I didn't even realize I was in burnout. But what it usually means is a sense of helplessness, a sense of perhaps working really hard but not getting any traction. Burnout's not just about working really hard though. Sometimes it's about not knowing where to focus or feeling like no one understands what you're trying to do. And that can feel really lonely. And so they're some of the key parts that I've noticed through my own journey and through conversations with many others working in sustainability. Isolation, sense of meaning or lack of meaning, feeling largely misunderstood. They're some of the key contributing factors. And so if you look inside most organizations right now and found the sustainability function, it tends to be either sitting within risk, communications, marketing, or perhaps as a voluntary role that people have put their hand up and opted in for. And they could be across any of the function in the organization. And when I say that this responsibility is given to these people who are trying to influence systems they don't control, I think this is especially the case in point for those who are on a voluntary committee. The voluntary committee, it feels altruistic, it feels like a pathway, but it's almost like a pathway that's setting people up to fail, because when it's voluntary, how is that integrated through the organization? And how is it perceived? I was on a green team myself back in the day, and it was great. I was learning. I mean, it's definitely a place that can initiate some change, but how widespread that is. Like for me, it influenced and it helped me as an individual, but I don't know that it helped the organization. And I see in companies now where this is the case, sometimes they're only meeting once a quarter to discuss what they need to get done. And so is it any wonder that progress is slow when there's not enough space given, there's not enough authority given? Then it's just kind of like, oh, it's nice that you do that. And I've had people say that to me over the years. Oh, that's great. You've got your cause, I've got mine. And I'm like, well, this is true. And also, sustainability is something that every human on this planet should have a vested interest in. It affects us right here, right now. And so when you're trying to get a wider organization to understand about sustainability, and the way that it's set up in the organization means that you may be sitting at your desk writing reports that the rest of the organization don't understand, just to meet a requirement, to complete a task, to report up to senior management, but that doesn't actually change anything about the way that it's operating, and it can feel really hard. It can feel a little empty, and maybe you're wondering when you get to do the meaningful stuff, when you get to make a change. And it seems like this is one of the most important jobs in the world right now, and yet people aren't being rewarded for it. There's no remuneration, and therefore it's like saying it's not important. If there's no salary attached to it, how do you define the importance of this function? And people are made to feel like they're special for being given the opportunity to volunteer on top of their existing jobs. You're getting free work from them, but there is so much value in this space that's not being acknowledged, that's not being leveraged, and there's a real missed opportunity right now. And over the course of the time that I've been working in this space, it has changed. That I am glad for. I left Australia because there were no avenues in this space for me 12, 13 years ago. And now there are so many jobs and so many volunteer roles doing this. However, with that, it's almost become like you have to do it and you have to know what you're talking about it. And so you have to do it and you have to know what you're talking about. And so a lot of people are just fumbling their way, when actually there are quite a lot of people who have the skills that could make the impact that it needs to make. And there's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in saying to your team that you don't know something about this. This didn't exist a decade ago, for the most part. Certainly not in the way that it does now. And yet we're all pretending like we know. And yet, by pretending that we know what we're doing, we're robbing our teams of the opportunity to learn together. You don't need to have all the cards in your hand. You don't need to have all the answers. There's so much value within your team that learning together how to do this well is incredibly valuable. So at the moment, when we're funneling all of this onto one person or a small group of people, what I see happening is any question about sustainability is handballed. Oh, I don't know about that. You need to talk to Tom. Oh, I don't know about that. You need to talk to such and such. And Tom are working away on their reports or events or ways to try and engage the team. But because so little emphasis is put on it from the top, they find that events they hold have the same people opting in time and again. Or they develop an inspiring sustainability plan that gets circulated by email or on the internet that no one reads, no one understands, no one asks any questions about. And therefore what's written on the paper might sound fantastic, but it doesn't happen in reality, and they're left feeling disappointed. And over time, this can lead to cynicism and burnout. And maybe that person leaves to go find somewhere where they can make the kind of difference and add the kind of value that they want to. And then the new person comes in and they start trying to fight that whole battle all over again. Or the company decides, oh, well, we tried with Tom, but that didn't work out. Or we got our certification, or we submitted our report, and now we don't need anyone there. It's not a priority at the moment. It can be really disheartening for those that are working in the space. Something else that I see play out is beyond the work frustrations. The bigger despair and burnout can come from knowing that the environment, the place we live, the world we live in is under such threat, and that can feel extremely stressful. I've felt it myself many a times over the years. One profound example that I remember, I was at a presentation and the video they showed was just, wow, just so raw and so real about the devastating things that we are doing, we are allowing to happen on this planet. And I think also that having worked in this space a long time, I'm very selective about what I consume. And I have stepped back from, consuming a lot of documentaries and things these days because it is confronting. It's really confronting. So I was in this room full of people who cared, and maybe that was part of it as well, is that all of us there cared about this. All of us were ones that had opted in, and we watched this video, and each of us shared, something that we felt at that time, and I just lost it, and I cried, and I hardly knew these people. That's how strong the emotions were, because the weight of genuinely caring about what we're losing, about what we're taking for granted, is really heavy. And so this is the extra layer of what people are carrying when they go into these roles. It's often because they care so much about what's really happening in the world for their families, for their health, for the wildlife. There are many reasons why this is ignited in some of us more than others. And there are also many ways that we can bring others on the journey with us so it's not so lonely. So there is a difference between just being exhausted and being totally burnt out. And I think that burnout really is that sense of despair, the sense of no matter what we do, will it ever be enough? That other people just don't seem to care as deeply and as much. So there's real value in these people who care. There is real value there that is often overlooked. So how can we take that as a gift, as the gift that it is? How can we appreciate that and allow them to really access that meaning, acknowledge their leadership, support them by being involved in the journey? I think that's somewhere that we can go, because at this rate, the cost is concentrating a heap of stress onto a few people. And yes, there is systemic stress. There is systemic busyness. I talked about that in episode 2 on nervous system regulation. It's super important. We all have a responsibility to take care of our well-being. And companies have a responsibility to take care of the well-being of their staff as well. But in the case of people leading sustainability, this is something for the future, not just of companies, but of humanity. And whilst they're extremely resilient, the cost of continuing to operate in this way means this cycle of people and burnout and cynicism and despair and giving up is going to keep churning around. I want to share a story of hope, because I've worked with a lot of leaders who've come to this point of exhaustion. And a lot of the ones that come to me tend to come to me because they have tried a lot of things. And so it's really brave to reach out to get an external perspective and some help and support. And also, it is such a gift for the rest of your team, because you don't have to keep holding this by yourself. So several years ago, I worked with a business owner of a hotel and a hospitality school. And for the purpose of this story, I will call her Sue. So there was a lot that they had done, and they came to me after hearing me speak at an event and wanted to know, how do we get rid of more single-use plastic? How do we become zero waste? And I think that they had quietly been working on things and doing what they could, but they realized they've reached a point where they needed some outside help. And so what we were able to do, and this was really interesting, is that initially I got some information from them online, and it's really fascinating. We always want to be looked upon in a really positive light. And so I find whenever I do these remote audits, the remote audit information tells a much nicer story than reality. And the reality was also very nice, don't get me wrong. And I'm never judging a property that I work with. I'm merely there to observe, support, and draw out more opportunities. And honestly, like a lot of the time in those early days, I found myself having this conversation in my head that I would be invited to meet and to work with a hotel. And they would be telling me about all of their great things. And I would be thinking, what do you need me for? And then I'd go for the physical site inspection. And that's when I would be like, okay, now I can see the gaps. So we did that too. And I traveled to Sue's hotel and started to look around, and I stayed there. And that was also helpful because there's certain things in that day-to-day operation. I could look at a room, but to actually stay as a guest gives more information, more insight. What does turn down look like? What does housekeeping look like? If you stay tuned, there's more on that in the next episode. What does that all look like in practice, not just like a snapshot in time of a room, of a static room? So I could start to see things, like start to have conversations with the team. And it was really that point, that curiosity that came from Sue of what else can we do? And so we worked together, the leadership team and her and myself, and we did a full week of training and integration. And it's probably one of the most fun weeks that I've had. And then they started to bring forward ideas. And the real magic, I think, in this particular situation was not just, this process in itself, I've seen work time and time again. We unpack things. We think about different potential solutions together as a team. But where these guys went one step further was they then developed their own training program using what we'd worked on, taking that, integrating that, creating their own training program, and then they rolled that out to the entire staff, to all of the students in the hospitality school, and they made it a regular thing. And that is something really special there, because it takes them from being in a position of we're stuck to a position of there are so many opportunities, and this is how we uncover them. We uncover them through engagement, through questions, through interrogation, through examination. And so not only did this process reduce the stress on Sue, but it actually gave a gift to her entire team. Because when everyone's in it together, it starts to be something that you're working toward together, not something that's divisive. Oh, that's Sue going on about plastic again. No, this is about, hey, I saw this. What did you think of this? Hey, what could we do about this? What do you think of this idea? And starting to develop something collectively. And that's the shift. And that's where I see burnout start to fade, because there's support, there's the collective, and it's not each other we should be fighting. The goal for everyone is to have a better, cleaner world, a higher quality of life. That's the goal, really, to protect the beautiful nature and biodiversity of this miracle of a world that we live on. Everybody wins from this. So we shouldn't be fighting each other on it. We can create so much more when we work together, and everybody benefits. And sharing knowledge is one of those ways. Sharing knowledge, sharing empowerment, sharing agency, sharing the pathway to solutions. It's really uniting. The more things we do as a collective, the more united we are. Everybody rises up with that. So it's not that one person has all the answers. That's where the burnout occurs. But when we work in connection and community, there's a sense of belonging and empowerment that's available to everyone. That's when we see less burnout, more connection, less despair, more hope. So there's a few common threads coming through the episodes that I've recorded so far, and they are all connected because everything is connected. From things like short-term political cycles to compliance ceilings, and in today's episode, concentrated responsibility. These things all compound on each other, which is why things feel hard, heavy, complicated, pointless, and where we can start to move through this, where we can start to find the collective internal compass of your organization or of you as an individual. This is where we start to see the solutions, where we can start to set the direction beyond political cycles, beyond compliance limits, and beyond concentrating responsibility for sustainability on just one person. When we start to set the internal compass to what the collective want to achieve, then we start moving in that direction. Then we start to clear the fog. And so if the system is designed in a way that makes this work hard, is it really fair to keep asking individuals to carry it? This is the next layer of a common thread. When we put the responsibility on one person, then they're destined to fail. We see that here with sustainability managers. They're going up against the odds. They're going up against a system that is not supporting the change that they're there to design. And we also see it with guests in tourism, that the consumer is often the one given the task of opting out of changing the towels or opting out of the single-use coffee cup. And it's a really steep hill to put them on. So when it becomes a collective vision and a collective mission, change is not just possible, but it's inspiring, it's interesting, it's creative. I've seen companies and people within companies come up with initiatives and implement them in really short spans of time because they're given the agency, the empowerment, and the seat at the table, the voice at the table to be able to contribute to seeking solutions and then implementing them. One was during a plastic-free workshop at a hotel. One of the staff suggested that they start composting. They had a lot of plants and they have food and beverage outlets, so they've got organic waste. And within a month, they had set up the composting system and it was working really well. And they'd brought some of their colleagues in, they'd done it as a team, and the pride on achieving that came from those staff members who worked on that project was amazing. And then the rest of the organization celebrated them as well. So distributed ownership isn't about shirking responsibilities, which may be something that people are like, oh, well, if I'm the sustainability manager, I have to do all of these things. And I've even been told that when I've been running a workshop myself. Someone once said to me, I feel like you're getting us to do your job for you. And I'm like, no. Yes, but no. It's because if we tell people what to do, there's no ownership. So when we invite them to be part of the story, then there's ownership, then there's results, then there's pride in the day-to-day, there's measurable outcomes, and then there's scope to do more than just what's the basic requirement for a report or what have you. And so The conversation that's missing the most at the moment, you can see this at two levels. One is between owners and managers and the sustainability lead. Are you talking? Are you asking the sustainability lead about their challenges? Are you curious about what they have to say? That's one layer. And then the other layer, sustainability leads. Are you talking to your wider team, to housekeeping, front of house, F&B? What are their challenges? Talk with them. How can you help them solve their problems? So if you're a sustainability manager or part of a voluntary green team, if you're that one person pushing uphill and wondering if it's worth it, I want you to know that it is, and there is another way that places less burden on your shoulders. Have those conversations. Ask people what they're struggling with, what they see. It might be something you don't see. Invite them into the conversation. And if you are an owner, a CEO, or a general manager, or the department head, notice where you're handballing sustainability to just one person, and take a step back and have a bigger conversation about how you can support that person more, how you can help them to achieve what needs to be achieved and be involved in that conversation. That's my request, my invitation, my message to you today. It doesn't have to be a lonely, despairing cycle. It can be consistently improving, consistently empowering, and bringing people together. This podcast is called Two Homes. We're exploring our inner world and the outer system. Our inner world, in this case, it may be that sustainability manager struggling in a system that isn't supporting, and the outer world not reflecting what's going on with the sustainability manager because the integration is missing or unsupported. So how do we bring those two worlds together so that what it says on paper is what is happening in reality, so that what is in the heart of your sustainability team is also in the hearts of your entire team, and vice versa. Because when sustainability work moves from an individual burden to a shared culture, then the pressure shifts, and so does the possibility for real change. And so if the burden is misallocated, what is actually driving our behavior day to day? That's a question for next time. Thank you for being here, for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found it insightful and useful. And if you're enjoying the Two Homes podcast, then please leave me a review on wherever you're listening to this. This is a brand new podcast, and I know that there is so much potential to help so many people. And by you leaving a review, you're helping more people find this podcast and this space to explore these ideas that are often not held publicly, not held in the open. Let's bring them out in the open. And I thank you so much for being here. I'll look forward to seeing you next time on Two Homes. I'm your host, Sarah Rhodes. Bye.